permission to come aboard?
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
And here we go.
Live from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, welcome to episode 110 of the Confirmed Epic Podcast, the official podcast of the epicreview.com. Today, our featured review will be a breakdown of Superman and Lois the Pilot, the much-awaited spin-off, I guess, if you want to call it that, of the CW Supergirl, although I would argue that it feels completely different and in a good way from the other CW stuff, including Supergirl. Maybe you could compare it more to Supergirl when it was on CBS. And of course, that is Tyler Hoechlin as Superman, and I believe it's Betsy Tulloch as the great reporter Lois Lane. But we'll be breaking that down in our featured review, and thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for clicking play on YouTube, whether you're listening on your computer, you're listening in your car, you're listening on your phone, however you have come to the Confirmed Epic Podcast today. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's been an honor to be able to bring these episodes to you and continue to this going solo. Jerry will be back. That is for sure. We just got to work things out. He and I are hoping to get into the same room and podcast once we're both vaccinated. I've been lucky enough to have the first COVID-19 vaccine, and Jerry is looking to get the first one here in the next couple weeks. So maybe late spring, early summer, we could be on here discussing something like Black Widow. But regardless, no matter how much time's in between, the Confirmed Epic Podcast must go on. If anything, we are persistently inconsistent, but we continue to march on with episode 110. Today is going to be more of a classically structured show. I enjoyed last episode, definitely rambled on a bit about kind of a meta podcasting topic, and that was a lot of fun. I know 24 of you, at least up until this point, have downloaded that episode and listened most all the way through. So everyone who did that and heard our discussion on the Joker line, we live in a society, that is so awesome that you guys took the time to do that. But let's go ahead and get into our normal type show. So we'll start out with what we've been checking out, get into some epic news items of the week / kind of discussion topics. And then our feature review, as again, is Superman and Lois the Pilot. So let's go ahead and get into what we've been checking out this week.
Check checklist? Check. Double check checking of checklist? Check.
So the first thing that I have been checking out is the second Star Wars High Republic era book that I have read. It's not the second released. We had a young adult novel, Out of the Shadows, by Justina Ireland, or excuse me, that's a kid's novel. The one I checked out is technically a YA novel, and it follows the adventures of a 17-year-old Jedi Padawan named Wreath Silas, and that is Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. Now, last episode, I heaped a ton of praise onto our intro book from Charles Soule, The Light of the Jedi Into the High Republic, even saying that's probably top 2 or 3 Star Wars book all time, old EU, new Disney canon. So this one, I won't say it had a lot to live up to, because I approached this as, hey, this is a YA novel, but that doesn't mean I didn't expect quality. Lost Stars I have not read, but is a lot of people's favorite Star Wars book in the Disney canon, so I need to check that out in the near future. But that being said, I did temper my expectations. I didn't expect to jump into this book and see the continuing adventures of Elzar Mann or Buryaga or Avar Kriss. But the quality bar had been set relatively high, and it's Claudia Gray. Claudia Gray, for those of you who don't read Star Wars books, she is, I would say, top 2 or 3 Star Wars, especially new canon authors, and probably she's probably in the top 10 overall Star Wars authors. So she's not quite in Timothy Zahn or John Jackson Miller level yet, or Drew Cashin, but she's in the discussion. And Phasma was one of my favorite Star Wars novels of the new Disney canon. It took me a while to get through that one, but it is a great book. She's really, really solid on world building, which is what the High Republic is trying to do. It's Star Wars, but it's a brand new era of Star Wars that we are not familiar with up until this point. And Into the Dark, I would say it's a solid entry into the High Republic era. I don't know if now. I don't want to say it's not game changing, because you do get some new things introduced to the Star Wars mythos. In the last book, we were introduced to the Mad Max type villains, the Nile, and they make an appearance in this book, but they're not the primary antagonist. I'm not going to spoil the overall plot for Into the Dark by Claudia Gray, but I am going to mention some characters, species, and stuff here and there that may be a little bit more than, back of the book synopsis type thing. So if you are planning on reading this, maybe just skip ahead about 5 minutes or so on YouTube. And I just don't want to spoil this for anybody, but we're introduced to a sentient plant species known as the Drenjar. And the Drenjar it sounds kind of dumb, but in the book, it works. They are a walking, talking plant species that apparently feed off of dark side energy. I don't know if we'd say they put out dark side energy, but they are almost dark side energy incarnate would be the best way that, at least coming out of one reading of the book, that I could put it. And they are trapped on this space station that Reese Silas and the crew he puts together that include a rock as a co-pilot named Geode. It sounds like it shouldn't work, but believe it or not, it does, even in the climax of the story. So we have a couple Jedi here on this adventure, I'll say, and it's an adventure they don't expect to get on, which is how the best of Star Wars goes when you look back to New Hope and you got the farm boy, the smuggler, and the princess all thrown together with the talking carpet. And we have one of the greatest films of all time in 1977, Star Wars. At the end, just Star Wars, but eventually Star Wars and New Hope, of course. And you have Reese Silas, who's being assigned to leave Coruscant to go out onto the frontier, meet up with his master, who is a character mentioned in the first High Republic book that we got, Light of the Jedi, but I'm not going to say who that master is. And some unfortunate events occur, and instead, after the great disaster, which of course causes some hiccups to the hyperspace lanes, they are forced to seek shelter in an abandoned a Maximin, I believe was the name of it, space station. And while it appears initially that nobody's on board, of course that's not going to be the case. And on this crew, of course, I mentioned Reese Silas. He is proof that a Padawan is not something that is an obstacle to Star Wars, but when written well and the characters given a true voice instead of just made a plot point, Padawans can be quite interesting characters to view the lens of a galaxy far, far away through, and that's exactly what Reese Silas was. But he's on board with a couple other Jedi. One is Des Ryden, who was the former apprentice to his current master. We also have Comac, and there is one other Jedi in there that I can't recall. Allura. Allura is her name off the top of my head. And Allura she has decided to kind of give up the traditional Jedi path, and she is known as what is a way seeker, just trying to connect with the Force in different ways in unknown regions, and they actually leave her character in a very interesting place. And the ship, I love the name of their ship, is simply called the Vessel, and we have a character named Affie Holloway, who is the co-pilot to the, I guess, technical owner of the vessel, a guy named Lassalle, and again, a sentient I say sentient, he is sentient, but you really don't see him move. You don't hear his voice at all as far as in written word. Into the Dark by Claudia Gray, named Geode. And I really like what they set up here. There's two things that I pulled from the High Republic era as far as this bridge between the prequels and the Old Republic, which I'm sure Del Rey and Disney Publishing will touch up on, 10, maybe 15 years from now. No need to do it now, but as an old fan of the original Old Republic EU stuff, I'm excited for when they explore that era with Revan and Darth Bane and all those Sith and former Sith that I had come to know and love through those books. However, on board the space station, there are a set of statues that they assume are Sith statues or Sith monuments, and they're full of dark side energy, so they won't go to remove them from the space station. Come to find out, they were not Sith statues per se as far as being filled with dark side energy, but rather they were put in place by the Sith to contain the dark side energy put off by these sentient plants known as the Dream Jar. And to be two, I'm going to say two real books, no offense to anybody who liked the children's novel or the kids book. I mean, that's fine. They're out there if you want to read it. I'm not going to read it, but I know there's plenty of completists like Jerry. He reads everything Star Wars, from the coloring books to the most complicated Thrawn novel. So more power to you if you're going that deep into the current Disney canon Star Wars lore. But myself, considering this to be the quote-unquote second real book of the High Republic era, and to be two books in, and we have not just one, but two main sets of antagonists who have never been in Star Wars before, who are not Sith, in the Nihil and the Drenjar, and to actually tie the Drenjar into the Sith mythology, as in the Sith had a bigger fear of these creatures than the Jedi initially do, and the doors that could open up. Were those statues put up during the Old Republic era? I mean, that could be something really cool to go back to, but is Claudia Gray doing world building done right? Once again, just like she put, I forgot the name of Phasma's planet. It was like Pascal or something. It seemed like, this barren wasteland, but she made it one hell of an interesting place. So when I rated this book, because I do, and I go and I recap all the Omnis and the Star Wars books and trades and stuff that I read on my Tumblr, please check that out. Tumblr is an awesome place to be right now. The Real Brad Bell, REEL, bradbell.tumblr, that's TUMBLR.com. A lot of pictures of my Labradors on there, which, by the way, they got in a kind of a nasty fight today. But when I rated this book, I gave it 3.5 out of 5, so a good and a half. And if you're going into the High Republic stuff, don't skip this because it's a YA. I definitely want to see the follow-up book to this group of characters and where their story goes. They got a book coming out this summer. I believe Justina Ireland's picking it up the torch from Claudia Gray here. But good and a half for Into the Dark. So let's talk a little bit about the comic that I've been consumed with the past 2 weeks. So on Valentine's Day, my wife, Abby, aka the mother of Beagles, now the mother of two beautiful kids, but my wife, Abby, got me the two Punisher Max omnibuses, or omnis, I guess I should say, by Garth Ennis. If you're not familiar with this series, it launched in 2004. The Max line of Marvel Comics were like hard R, language, violence, and other things in there, and you had to be 17 up, I think, to buy them, maybe 18 up. I mean, there's nothing like filthy in here, I would say, but it's not something that you would want a 13-year-old going into a comic book shop and picking it up. But I managed, back in the day when I was in high school, to find an issue here or there. but I never got to consistently read this run, and this is supposed to be the definitive Frank Castle Punisher run, and Garth Ennis has a great voice for this character, as so many others have said in the past, and I'm just echoing that sentiment, because the Punisher is a hard character to get right, but what Ennis does in Volume 1 of this Punisher Max Omnibus set, which I've not read Volume 2, so this is only going to be a checking out on Punisher Max Volume 1, is he humanizes Frank Castle not through just the death of his family by the mob, but by proxy of really, really good characters. Because Frank Castle himself, aka the Punisher, is vengeance incarnate, right? He's not going to be someone who, after 25 issues, is, too much of an interesting character. Yeah, you dip in 12 issues here or there, but to sustain a consistently entertaining and enthralling Punisher series is not an easy thing, and Ennis is the perfect guy for the job here. I remember going into the old Gaston Mall here in the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, no longer there. They tore it down when they tore down the media play, and seeing the Punisher Max behind the counter, and it's something that I always wanted to pick up from Jim Wah's Collector's World in Gastonia, North Carolina, who used to be a sponsor of this show, and they're still out there in Gastonia if you want to check them out. But seeing what Frank will do to defend the defenseless, to avenge the innocent in this book, is Punisher at his best. There's several good stories in here. To me, this is the definitive Vietnam War Punisher origin story. At the beginning, it's a 4-part miniseries, and it's simply called Born. So that was probably my second favorite story in the book, but my favorite was Mother Russia, and we get the original version of Nick Fury, who recruits Frank Castle to clean up a mess for the U.S. military in exchange for access to a database that will allow Frank to hunt down the worst of the worst, the most despicable human beings, criminals, not just in New York, not just in the United States, but in the world. So Frank takes up Nick Fury on this offer, and he is to go into a Russian military base and retrieve a deadly virus. I know nobody wants to hear about deadly viruses anymore, but the biochemist who created this virus in a lab ended up getting killed. I'm not going to spoil how, but he actually injected his 6 or 7-year-old daughter not only with the virus but with a cure, and the only way that you would be able to extract the formula, I know that's not the proper terminology, but extract the virus and the cure for the virus would be to get her blood and study her. That way they could not just kill his daughter. He basically put a life insurance policy on her by doing that. So Frank Castle and another military man, the best of the best, as they say, are sent into Russia, and she is being stored on a nuclear military base. And man, this is just some of the best that Marvel Comics has to offer. This era of Marvel Comics from about 2002 to 2012, I think, is the best they've ever been. Of course, I'm a bit biased because that's when I was buying everything, reading everything, borrowing everything from my friend Joe, who was spending about $80 a month at the comic book store. Of course, this was one that I missed, this story, for multiple reasons. But how Frank gets out of this situation, I will not spoil for anybody. And I'm not saying you got to read this whole run. This run is not for the fan of heart. This run is not for everybody. If you're a Punisher fan, this is a must-read, first of all. But if Punisher is not something you want to somebody you want to spend 50 issues with, 60 issues with by the time I guess you complete both Omnis, go on Comixology, go on Marvel Unlimited, find the trade paperback, eBay, Amazon, somewhere, for Punisher Max Mother Russia. You will not be disappointed. I cannot recommend this enough. So I ended up giving this Omni overall a grade and a half. are 4.5 out of 5. The supporting characters are great. Now, Mother Russia confirmed epic. That's one of the best Marvel comic stories from an action and a humanity perspective. Just the blending of the two perfectly that I have ever read. So highly recommend Mother Russia, confirmed epic, and the Omnibus overall 4.5 out of 5. So without further ado, let's get into some epic news topics. Spawn! The hottest character in 1992 and apparently in 2021. That's right. If you don't know who Spawn is, he is a demon vigilante created by Todd McFarlane as part of probably the defining character of the Image Revolution, when he, Rob Liefeld, Silvestri, Jim Lee, all those guys left Marvel to do all their own creator-owned books, like Youngbloods from Liefeld, like Wildcats from Jim Lee. The big thing was they created Image, which changed comics with books like The Walking Dead. But the one really successful original Image character was Spawn. He's kind of a mix of Batman, Spider-Man, and Etrigan, the demon. If I had to give you a character mismatch. That being said, I know as much about Spawn as somebody who's never read an issue, because guess what? I have never read a single issue of Spawn. To comic book fans, though, he is so recognizable. His toys were some of the hottest sellers of the 1990s, especially in comic book shops. McFarlane revolutionized the toy industry in the 90s with his Spawn figures. And to see this character have this comeback is just been quite astounding to me. And let's talk about this comeback and what Spawn, the year of Spawn, as Todd McFarlane, could actually mean for 2021. But have you ever read Spawn? If you have, comment on this. Let me know why you love the character, why you hate the character. I'm about to dive into Spawn. So let's just kind of build up the Spawn hype before we get the big announcement here. So this week, the Spawn Compendium came out from Image Comics. That was issues 1 through 50. It's a phone book of Spawn issues of the original 1992 series, all in color. I know there's been previous versions, apparently, of this book that were in black and white. So this is full color. It looked like color restoration when I was flipping through it. And the only bad thing I will say is it doesn't have covers, apparently. But that didn't stop this book from being sold out at Amazon, sold out at Target, sold out at Books A Million, sold out at Walmart. That's right. Not an omnibus, not a deluxe hardcover, not a #1 issue, not a first appearance of a character, a compendium. Of course, most people will know the compendiums, if you're a comic book fan, from The Walking Dead. That whole almost 200 issue series was collected in 4 compendiums. They are essentially softcover omnibuses, which is not a real thing. If you're an omnibus collector, you just kind of cringe at that, because we all love the deluxe hardcover treatment. But this is really the only available, I say available loosely, use that term loosely, way to read Spawn. So this sells out everywhere. And it's kind of like, what? Well, one of the reasons it sold out is there were a ton of orders for it, but there was enough supply to meet the demand. But I believe a week and a half before this was supposed to come out, Todd McFarlane was teasing a big announcement. And he ended up announcing 2021 as the year of Spawn. And what does that mean? He has now Spawn's been ongoing since 1992. We are at issue, I think, 314 to 317 right now. For a non-Batman book, a non-Spider-Man book, that is unprecedented to have a creator-owned character running not just for 300-something issues plus and still a chugging, but since 1992, people. It's been a while since 1992. If you walked into a comic book store from about 1992 to 95, Spawn was everywhere. He defined comics in the 90s. But if you were just picking up Big Two comics, like I was as a kid, when I had the fortunate enough opportunity to go into a comic book store and my parents took me in there, shout out to Leatherwoods and Shelby, they're no longer there, but that was the first comic book store I ever set foot in. If you're listening to this and you're from that area, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But you would see this character, and he would kind of scare you as a kid, and he would be intriguing. But to have him going on this long is just crazy. But the way I looked at Spawn is like, okay, he has his diehard fans. They keep buying the book. McFarlane's gonna keep making the book. It's turning a profit. McFarlane's a brilliant businessman. As I said, he revolutionized and continues to revolutionize the toy industry currently with his DC figures. But over quarantine, over COVID, you saw a shift in the sales charts as far as Spawn was concerned. Spawn issue 300 came out right before the pandemic, and that was a huge seller. Oh, 300 issue, I want to get on. There were tons of variants. There was basically a parody of the Amazing Spider-Man 300 cover that McFarlane did. He did for the Spawn 300 cover, and apparently issue 300, which again I have not read, was pretty good. A ton of people bought it for the first time in a long time. Spawn was a top 10 comic book, and people were like, you know what? I'm gonna stay on board with Spawn. And from 300 till now, which is we're at about 314, I believe currently, he has been a top 10 book. Not Marvel character, not a DC character, a creator-owned, the original creator-owned Image character, Spawn. So he's seen a resurgence. So you've seen his popularity grow in his titled book in single issues. You saw the hype for the compendium, and then you saw hype for this figure. So, and let me say this figure, I use that term loosely. How about the Spawn action figure? Apparently, a year ago, Todd McFarlane launched a Kickstarter, and his goal was to raise about $40,000. He's going to do a definitive Spawn action figure. He's basically going to redo the original Spawn figure, just, a little bit taller version, cleaner version. The cape, well, Spawn has the most badass cape in all comics. I knew that back as a kid in the 90s. If you've ever seen the Spawn 90s movie, you know that. But it was a very sick looking figure, and it met its pledge pretty quick. And then McFarlane introduced alternate versions and all kinds of accessories. This Kickstarter went from something that needed to raise $40K to something that raised $3.74 million. And those Spawn Kickstarter figures, Google them, look up YouTube reviews, but those are long sold out. And if you want one, you could have paid $40 back then, but now you're looking at probably $140 to $300, depending on which variant of the action figure you are lucky enough to get your hands on. Unfortunately, I missed out on that. Now, Spawn did appear in the new Mortal Kombat game. McFarlane has the Mortal Kombat license, so there is a cool Spawn figure in the Mortal Kombat line. If that's something you think you may be interested in, try to get your hands on those, because those are starting to sell out at retailers as well. So we have this perfect storm of hype, right? We have the compendium, we have the Kickstarter, we have issue 300 exceeding expectations, and Spawn remaining this top 10 book and one of the hottest books in all of COVID-19, the comics bubble. A lot of people thought that a lot of stores were going to collapse, and a lot of stores struggle with DC leaving Diamond as a distributor. But one of the things that kept these stores going was Spawn, which I can't believe I'm saying that. I can't believe I missed out on this as a comic books fan as far as not seeing this right in front of my eyes. But apparently all this was an indicator to Todd McFarlane that now was the time, not 1992, but 2021, to declare as the year of Spawn. And let's talk about what this means. What this means is that starting this summer, with Spawn's Universe #1, J. Scott Campbell Spawn is going to get, I believe, 3 or 4 new ongoing titles. That's a big deal. J. Scott Campbell covers are just, jaw-dropping. Mainly famous for his Spider-Man covers. Just look up those if you want to see what I'm talking about. But here's what we have here. We have Spawn's universe is supposed to take Spawn from a single issue book to a universe much like the Marvel universe or DC universe. You're also, so that is in the summer, I believe that's in June. That is going to launch. You also have the Spawn book that's been ongoing is going to have a jumping on point, I believe, at issue. I need to look this up real quick. I believe that's where I was getting the issue 317 from. And you're going to get a book called King Spawn that's going to be a #1, and a new Spawn book with a brand new female, I guess, kind of version of Spawn. It's almost like Spawn meets the Punisher in its female form, speaking of the Punisher. And apparently this is going to be a team book in which it's titled The Scorched, in which you're going to have Spawn, the title character, Redeemer, Gunslinger, which I think he's been recently introduced. There's also rumors of him getting his own ongoing, Medieval Spawn, and She-Spawn. Now, She-Spawn, I believe, don't quote me on this because I'm not a Spawn expert, is the one who J. Scott Campbell has on the cover, the Punisher meets Spawn female character on the cover of Spawn's universe. So that's a lot of Spawn. That is a lot, considering you've really only had one Spawn book going from 1992. So let's just recap, because I think it warrants it here. This is the year of Spawn. After all, you got, I guess, King Spawn #1. You have Spawn Scorch, which is the team book. You have Spawn's universe. And then you have Spawn ongoing, which has been since 92. And there's rumors of all kinds of books that are going to be coming out. Now, if McFarlane was just throwing all this stuff, I'd be like, ugh, looks like 90s schlock. Which, some of Spawn apparently is. But listen to some of these creators that have signed up for these books. One, Donny Cates, I believe, is going to be the lead writer on one of these books. Maybe, I have no idea which one. He's arguably the best writer in all of comics right now. Definitely at Marvel, I would say. You got Greg Capullo, who got started with Spawn, returning to do art on a lot of these books. Mike Del Mundo, Jimmy Chung, David Finch, Art Adams, Sean Gordon Murphy, Mark Silvestri, Mariko Takara, Frank Quietly. All these people are on board. How much so? Could that just be cover? Sure. Could they be doing interiors? Possibly. But that's what gets me excited. Okay? It's not that, there's going to be 4 new Spawn books, but this appears to be very well thought out. And McFarlane really thinks, in his heart, and I believe this, that, and this is a man who is a multimillionaire, just based on the toys alone. This is a man who buys coveted rare baseballs, huge MLB fan. He bought a bunch of the Sosa and McGuire balls, for example, back in the day. He may regret that now with the whole steroids thing, but this is somebody who could just, jump in his giant Scrooge McDuck pile of money he has over at Rancho McFarlane and be good to go. But he continues to inspire others. He continues to be a genuinely good human being. He continues to put out some of the best, retail toys in the market today, especially with that DC line that I'm just loving, and so many of y'all are. But no, he wants to, he's going to make a ton of money off this, don't get me wrong. But at some point, when you have so much money, it's like you do some of this stuff to put back out into the world, to give back as much as you're getting from the fans. And hopefully this will bring a whole new generation. As he mentioned, there's people who are under the age of 25, 28 right now. They've never had the chance to buy a Spawn #1 in the comic book store. And if this does anything near for the comic books industry what the original Spawn series did back in 1992, albeit it did create a little bit of a bubble, I'm not going to lie. But this could be just the shot in the arm, just the rejuvenation period that the comic book brick and mortar store industry needs to keep afloat post COVID, as you've seen a lot of shops closing their doors, sadly, and a lot of other businesses. So I can't wait for this. I do not buy single issues, as many of y'all know, but I think I'm going to pre-order the first 5 or 6 issues of all of these and see where it goes and give Spawn my full attention for 2021, the year of Spawn. Okay, let's move on from Spawn toys to some other big toy announcements this past week. So, due to COVID-19, we have unfortunately not been able to have the conventions that all of us geeks love, especially the people who collect toys. Even when you talk about these conventions, many of which we never go to, but we just look forward to the reveals online, from the high-end stuff at SDCC and NYCC to the stuff we will see from retailers at Toy Fair. And Jerry and I have done numerous episodes on New York Toy Fair over the past couple of years on the Confirmed Epic podcast. While there is no New York Toy Fair, one company, that's right, MezCon, decided that they will throw their own convention full of epic reveals, and that was MezCon 2021. And boy, did they have some big reveals, but not just that, reveals in the form of the licensing rights that they have got from certain franchises, which kind of shocked me, considering Hasbro is really doing well with a lot of these licenses in this scale. But let's talk. I'm not going to touch on every single MezCon 2021 reveal, but I do want to hit on a few of these. The one that caught my eye was the Green Ranger. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is doing a full-blown MezCon 112, Sword of Darkness, Dragon Dagger, everything's fabric, Green Ranger. I'm assuming there'll be a Tommy Oliver head sculpt, although that wasn't revealed, based on Joseph David Frank's iconic portrayal of the character. And if you're not familiar with MezCon, they're 6-7-inch figures, but they're almost like miniature Hot Toys. They come in an incredibly collectible box, tons of accessories, and usually detailed head sculpts. But this was a big deal because it showed that Hasbro is willing to, and we kind of saw this a couple months ago when 3-0 announced 1/6 scale Power Rangers figures. But to see them in the same scale allow a high-end collectible company like MezCon to make product was I don't want to say it's a game changer for the toy industry, but for the collectors, it was a big deal. So they got that reveal with the Power Rangers license. Now, this is more Jerry's territory. I don't know if this is a one and done, but they revealed a Destro from G.I. Joe. For those of you who are not well versed in Joe, that is the guy with the silver head, black outfit, red trim. And we had some other things. We had some cool horror stuff, some cool DC and Marvel stuff. We got a Gotham by Gaslight Batman. It looks awesome. Another classic comic Superman, which looks awesome. That being said, I hate to keep praising McFarlane, but just based on what he's doing with this scale, I have no desire to pick up any of this DC stuff because he's just blowing away anything Hasbro is doing with Marvel Legends, in my opinion. But if you're looking for some high-end Marvel stuff, the new Tiger Stripe Wolverine. But what really caught my eye, the reason I wanted to even bring this up in Epic News today, was they revealed the entire team, the Thing, the Invisible Woman, the Human Torch, Mr. Fantastic, that's right, Reed Richards, Johnny Storm, Sue Storm, and Ben Grimm, the Fantastic Four. MezCon 112 is doing the entire team. Now, I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, this will be a box set in the $350, $400 range, much like the Ghostbusters box set. And I have not been tempted to pick up MezCon in a while. I had some Spider-Man back in the day, but man, didn't really love it for the price. But there's just something about the aesthetic of the like Silver Age original Fantastic Four team that meshes so well with Mezco and the style they like to do. That they fit retro very well. And I think if you have a Marvel shelf, even if this is just an accessory to some Marvel Omnis or hardcovers or trades, or you just have like a dedicated Marvel toy shelf or shelves in Jerry's case, man, I think this would look great. And if it's not ridiculously expensive, and if the promo photos are any indication, this is something that I may be putting on my Christmas list. So that is the Fantastic Four by Mezco. We had a Michael Myers from Halloween 2. The first Halloween Michael Myers was astounding. Jerry had a review of that over at actionfigurebarbecue.com. We had a reveal of Bill and Ted. I'm not wanting Bill and Ted figures, but they're out there. Brandon Lee as the Crow, that iconic and unfortunately infamous performance considering his loss of life during the filming of that cult classic. Don't see much Crow stuff anymore. I mean, you do in waves, but for the most part, it comes and goes. This Crow figure looks incredible. But those are the big reveals. I'm sure I'm missing some. Tiger Stripe Wolverine looks pretty cool. They've done one of those. This looks like to be a 2.0, so a superior version of that. To me, when I look at Marvel and DC Mezco, what Hasbro's doing with Marvel Legends is not on par with what Mezco's doing with Marvel. Like the Mezco's to step up. Now, with Hasbro, with Power Rangers, it's going to be hard, I think, to convince a lot of... I was listening to the Ranger Command Power Hour, which is the best Power Rangers podcast on the internet. Shout out to those guys. But, I mean, Hasbro's doing some awesome Power Ranger stuff. And they're not just Mighty Morphin. They are tackling all time periods of and incarnations of the Rangers. So I think it's going to be hard to convince a lot of 6-inch scale Power Ranger collectors to switch over to Mezco, other than maybe for a figure here or there. With Marvel, it's an upgrade in my opinion. But man, with the McFarlane DC, there's no way I'm tempted to pick up any of this DC stuff. As good as this Gotham by Gaslight Batman looks. But anyway, check out the MezCon 2021 stuff. Bleeding Cool had really good coverage of that. So let's move on to the Man of Steel. But before we get into our featured review, there was other huge Superman news this week beyond the Superman and Lois Pilot, and that was that Warner Brothers announced that Ta-Nehisi Coates was going to write a Superman script to be produced by J.J. Abrams. Now, Ta-Nehisi Coates is one of the greatest active living writers. He has won several awards, but as far as the Geek Sphere, he relaunched Black Panther, very much on par with the stuff that you see on screen from the Chadwick Boseman portrayal of the character. He has done comics, he's done books, he's done political commentary. He is one of the most brilliant thinkers of our time, and his take on Superman would not only be thought-provoking but monumental, depending on what direction they go here. So I've heard there's a lot of splintering from this news, fallout, if you will, that is going kryptonite fallout that is going to impact DC's film landscape moving forward. So here's the first question we got to ask ourselves: is Henry Cavill done? Henry Cavill, good Superman. Not a great one in my opinion, but that has more to do with the writing of the character and the mishandle, especially of him by Joss Whedon in the original Justice League. We'll see what the Snyder Cut has to hold. But is Henry Cavill done? This would seem to indicate it. We have heard desire from him to continue to play the Man of Steel. Again, we'll see. As John King likes to say on CNN, we'll see. But my gut tells me Henry Cavill's done as Superman. I hope I'm wrong, because I want to see Man of Steel too. You can go back and listen to Confirmed Epic Podcast, episode 17. In 2013, we reviewed Man of Steel, and you will hear me say, on the record, that I hope Justice League are bringing in Batman in a Batman versus Superman movie, or a world's finest movie, as I was hoping it might be back then, which of course didn't end up being, would interfere with the positive trajectory Zack Snyder was going with, at the time, I believe, a Man of Steel 2 that David Goyer was working on. Of course, that infamously now changed to BVS. So, again, my gut tells me I could be wrong. Cavill's done. So, that leaves us with this version of Superman. Is it going to be Clark Kent? Is it going to be within the DCEU? Or is it kind of going to be like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, and to use a comic books imprint from DC, an Elseworlds version of Superman? And if it's an Elseworlds version of Superman, if it is Clark Kent, does that mean we're going to get an African American Clark Kent? There are also rumors of Val Zod, who was a black Superman introduced in Earth 2. By the way, that single issue that he was introduced in is just that, and his first full appearance and his first appearance overall. Oh my God, that's went from a $3 book to about $100 book. So if you can, go on eBay and check out those prices. That's the collector in me coming out. I can't deny it. But is he going to be the Black Superman, Val Zod, as shown in Earth 2, which by all accounts is an awesome character? I've not read it, but he was in the Earth 2 stuff, some of the Futures In stuff, I believe, by Scott Snyder. If you've read that, correct me in the comments. What direction are they going to go? And to me, if it's going to be within the DCEU, and there's a chance Cavill might come back, Val Zod's the way to go. But if it's not in the DCEU, or you're just done with that at this point, this idea of a shared universe, and we are going full like one-offs or series of films that's different from the DCEU, we call them Elseworlds, call them whatever you will, like I said, like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, then I think he needs to be Clark Kent. Look, I say this as a straight white male from North Carolina, so take any opinion I have here, whether it's with this or anything else, but especially with this, with a grain of salt. I think the world is not just ready for a black Superman. I think the world is ready for a black Clark Kent. And here's what I mean by that. And you've heard me compare Batman and Superman before. For Batman, Bruce Wayne's the disguise. He is Batman. For Superman, and this I'm sure will come up in our Superman and Lois discussion, he is Clark Kent. That's who he is. That's who he was raised in rural Kansas to be, despite being an all-powerful alien being from Krypton. Superman is just his obligation, his burden to bear, that he bears willingly, that he bears joyfully in the best done Superman stories, to be something for humankind to aspire to be something to inspire humankind. Superman is a duty he must fulfill, but at his core, at his heart, he is the farm boy from Kansas with a heart of gold. And I think to see that story told through a different lens, for example, Mark Bernardin, who is an African American, who is the co-host of Fat Man Beyond with the great Kevin Smith. Mark Bernardin's just genius, used to write for LA Times. He's written on several shows. Check out Mark Bernardin's work. But it would be important today, especially, I'm not going to get too political, but I think everybody knows kind of where we're at with race relations in this country in 2020 and going into 2021. It would be important, I think, to see a black Clark Kent. And what is it like to see a young black kid with these abilities in Kansas, which is, let's be honest, a super white place, rural Kansas. I've never been there, but if fiction tells us anything, that's the case, okay? I can only imagine were a writer as brilliant, as philosophical as Ta-Nehisi Coates, the story he would be able to weave with that. I'm not going to say that if it's Val Zod, I'm not looking forward to that. I absolutely will be looking forward to that. But I think it would mean more if Warner Brothers went the extra step and said, no, it's not Val Zod. It's Superman. It's not Black Superman. It is Clark Kent. It is Superman. It may be an African American playing him, portraying him. That may be the perspective you see as far as race, but he is WB's Superman moving forward. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it seems like this is all going toward a Michael B. Jordan Superman movie. I'm going to predict that now. I could be wrong. He wanted to play the character. Michael B. Jordan's, to me, he has reached A-list level. He's about at that Will Smith in the 90s level where he can carry a film. He can carry a franchise. He says he wants to be Superman. It's I don't know if it is quite like Marshall Ali saying, hey, I want to be Blade. And it's like, you're Blade. Because to me, Marshall Ali is one of the 2 or 3 best living actors. I put like DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis. There's other great ones, but just off the top of my head, those are the 3 best. But Michael B. Jordan's almost at the level saying, hey, I want to do this movie, that you find a way to make it happen. And it looks like all the moving parts are coming together with J.J. Abrams signing that deal with Warner Brothers to produce a ton of projects, bringing in Ta-Nehisi Coates. Can you imagine if Ryan Coogler finishes Black Panther 2? So he has experience in directing superhero films. He's worked with Michael B. Jordan on Fruitvale Station that launched his career. He's worked with Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger in Black Panther. Can you imagine a J.J. Abrams produced, Ryan Coogler directed Michael B. Jordan Superman movie? Or a trilogy of Superman movies. It could be the best that the Man of Steel has been since Christopher Reeve first made us believe a man could fly, as the poster said. And speaking of Marshall Ali, man, he should be like Jor-El or something. I don't know. I feel like they should find a way to make that work. I mean, and there's plenty of great actors you could throw out there to be a Black Superman. John David Washington would be great. Sterling K. Brown. I think he's just young enough where he could do it. I think he would be a great Black Superman. Just a great Superman overall. Michael B. Jordan. I think he's the one though, man. You know, Boss Logic, the great poster artist, did a kind of a mock-up with him as Superman a while back. I think he reworked it to have him as Val Zod Superman. And look, there's a lot of cool stuff with Val Zod. Like, look up the design of his suit. It's just badass. So maybe you use the Val Zod suit as an inspiration, but he's still Clark Kent. And I think that could work really well. And I think it's the Superman we need right now. And I am really excited about that. I know we're probably a long, long way from seeing another Superman movie post DCEU, post Snyder Justice League. But if Henry Cavill is going to be done as Superman, I think it's time for him to be done as Superman. Honestly, not for discussion for a different day we could dive deeper into. But from a future Superman to a current Superman and Tyler Hoechlin, let's get into our featured discussion / review of the pilot for Superman and Lois on the CW.
When we were dreaming about having a family, it didn't look like this, did it? Lost jobs, teens with severe anxiety, parents gone too soon.
Why'd you move the family here? Still looking for the simple life? 'Cause those days are gone, Clark. Long gone.
You got the weight of the world on your shoulders.
Really wish I could get drunk sometimes.
You're saying you're Superman?
No, we've seen Superman before. We've seen him.
Am I a bad father?
We're gonna be all right. No one ever dreams about the problems, but every life has them. Even the extraordinary ones.
That was from the trailer of Superman and Lois on the CW. So let's get into this. I'm excited. I'm going to be honest. I cried 2 times in the first 20 minutes of this show. Before we get into the story of, Superman and his family, which this is going to center around, we get kind of a montage of the career of Superman up until that point. And rather than hit on his iconic duels with the Superman's Rogue Gallery, we get to see the classic joy of the character as it was originally designed by Siegel and Schuster back when they debuted Superman in Action Comics #1. We see an homage to that, the green car from the cover of Action Comics #1 that you see Superman lifting. We see that done here with a green PT Cruiser. Just a cool nod to fans. But right after that, we see Superman interact with a young child. And at this point, Superman is in the costume from the right around World War II, the John Fleischer cartoon where it had Kingdom Come, Alex Ross borrowed from the Fleischer cartoon, I think, too, with his design of this S. It's like the black background in the classic red S as opposed to the yellow background. And he gets complimented by a child that he saves, cool suit, and then we get the line from Loeb and Sells, Superman for all seasons, thanks, my mom made it. That corniness works with Superman. And to say it doesn't is just asinine. Because Captain America is one of the corniest characters in all of comic books, especially if you go back to his original issues in the Golden and Silver Age. But he's one of the top 5 most popular comic book characters in the United States now, thanks to Chris Evans' portrayal and the MCU not messing with that too much, keeping the ethos of Steve Rogers and Captain America true to its moral core. And that is what I believe, at least based on one episode, we are going to get with this version of the Big Blue Boy Scout. I'm just going to say it again. He was joyful and he was smiling. Something that we never really seen with Henry Cavill's portrayal. I get that that's supposed to be a more grounded character, a more realistic, if you will, take on Superman, especially in Man of Steel. But the lines like, my mom made it, cheesy as that is, are what people love about Superman comics. To kind of wink and nod to the camera, not breaking the fourth wall, not going Deadpool level here. But there was some of that. And Tyler Hoechlin, man, it's not like Brandon Routh. So Brandon Routh was a spitting image of Christopher Reeves in Superman Returns, and when they brought him back for Crisis on Infinite Earths with the big CW crossover. And man, he looks like Superman, for goodness sakes. But Brandon Routh, while being the living embodiment of the Christopher Reeves version of the character, was just that. It was the continuation of the iconic, definitive Reeves version of Supes. But here we kind of get the modern day version of the Christopher Reeves Superman, and not a continuation of Reeves, but a new take on that joyful wink and nod type of Superman, who has the values of Ma and Pa Kent put into him at a young age. And that's why Clark Kent, the good human being, is the hero, not necessarily Superman. Clark Kent, the decent, humble human being who is blessed with these powers from Krypton, who, because of his moral compass instilled in him by his parents, is someone who is willing to bear the burden of humanity and willing to sacrifice his personal life to do that. You may think, oh, he's Superman. It's boring. He can do anything. Well, the fact that he in everything, and I used to think that. So if you're one of those people, I'm not trying to crap on you. But the fact that he can do anything and everything makes him feel like he has to do that. Of course, you got Peter Parker. With great power comes great responsibility, but Peter only has a few powers, and he makes the most of everything that he has at his disposal, from the web to the wall crawling to all the Spidey stuff, which we're not talking about Spider-Man here, although I do think there are a lot of parallels between Spider-Man and Superman. But the fact that Clark Kent can do so much more puts an even more burden on the character. Because I've been blessed with these abilities, if I don't maximize them to the fullest potential, if I don't save enough people, then I can't live with myself. I can't put my head on the pillow at night. But I gotta do that and try to have some semblance of a life. Now, we've seen Jonathan Kent brought into the comics here recently. We saw that with Peter Tomasi's run on Superman. We've seen him in Super Sons with Damian Wayne. I think he's been aged up a little bit now. I think he's almost approaching teenage years. And Jonathan Kent is a character that has been alluded to. But Jordan Kent's not, and that's what we have here. We have twin boys, Jonathan Kent, Jordan Kent. Jonathan is the All-American, young high school quarterback phenom, has a serious girlfriend, makes starting quarterback, I believe captain, as a freshman, which of course is unheard of in high school football. And Clark is wondering, did he inherit my abilities? Is that why he's such a good athlete? Whereas you have Jordan, who's the brooding, mad at the world, hates his parents type teenager, who is unathletic, and really he suffers from depression, to be quite honest. And how they subvert expectations with those two is something that's going to lead me to roll the reel forward to spoilers. So, spoilers for the Superman and Lois Pilot starting now. It is not Jonathan, the All-American quarterback in the making, who has powers. In fact, it's Jordan, the one that is struggling with depression. And there is a scene in a barn in which I'm not going to dive too deep into because I know this is spoilers, but I don't want to necessarily ruin this whole show for you because I know there's people who hadn't watched the show who are checking out what's going on in this podcast beyond the spoiler reel. I know you're out there. Thank you for listening. However, there is an incident in a barn in which Jordan, we find out, saves Jonathan. And that is when it's going to be later revealed that Jordan, not Jonathan, has powers. A lot goes wrong for Superman in this episode. A lot goes wrong for Clark Kent. And let's talk about that. And I'm going to tie that back to Jordan. The number one thing that's going wrong is he feels like he's losing Jordan due to depression and not being able to properly help his son deal with that depression because he's having to save the world being Superman, and he's sacrificing the quality of his family's life for the safety of the world, essentially. So he's got a son who's dealing with major depression. He then gets fired from the Daily Planet after they get bought out by some very Trumpian-like businessman, it sounds like, named Morgan Edge. So Superman gets fired from the Daily Planet. look, Spider-Man's been fired from the Daily Bugle dozens of times, but at least off the top of my head, I can't think of a time that Superman was fired from the Daily Planet. Of course, they're living in, it looks like a townhouse or something in Metropolis. Lois is still keeping her job at the Daily Planet. Then Superman's mom, Martha, that's right, Martha, is having some health problems, and she is going to pass away over the course of this pilot. So, his son's struggling with severe depression. He's lost his job. His mother dies. Then come to find out, his mother actually took a reverse mortgage, not to help her financially, but to help others that were struggling. And the bank actually owns Kent Farm, and they can choose to accept a buyout from the bank, or they can pay back the reverse mortgage on Kent Farm if they want to continue to keep it in the family. And there's a part in this episode in which there's something on the wall. This really hit me hard. I don't know if this was one of the times I teared up, but I came close for sure at this point, where Clark is remembering back on his childhood, and it goes so fast. That's a cliche of parenting. And that it goes by fast, while the nail may have been hit a little too far on the head there. It really does. If you have kids, whether they're young or old, you see how worn out and tired you are, but that means you're busy, which means time's going fast. The older you go, the quicker time goes, as my grandfather used to say, because you're so busy and you don't have time to think about time. Whereas when you're younger, you have more free time to actually perceive and think about time, in my opinion. And he knows he only has 4 more years with his sons who are just starting high school, and he brings it up to Lois, should we consider moving to Smallville? And of course, ultimately, at the end of the episode, that is what they're going to do. And that's going to set up kind of the structure of this show. It's not taking place in Metropolis. Now, I believe Lois is still working for the planet. But she's going, I guess she'll commute or she'll work online. Maybe she'll do Zoom. Who knows? But Lois still working for the planet. They're living in Smallville. Now you have this guy Jonathan, who's going to be the starting quarterback, has to go from Metropolis High, I guess, to Smallville High School. And it's going to be fun, I think, to see a Superman show again take place in Smallville. But you never feel that that's going to confine this version of Superman, because we see him avert nuclear disaster in one part of the world. We see him fight someone with, it looks like, Kryptonian powers or some type of Kryptonian technology at their disposal toward the end of the show, and he's fighting him all across Southeast Asia. So while you're going to get the small town feel and the emotional stuff, the stuff with heart, as I always like to say, in Smallville, the stakes of the world and maybe even one day the universe are going to be on the line. Like, I have full confidence. This didn't feel like Freak of the Week, typical CW sit-up. This looked better cinematically than anything that the Berlanti-verse, Greg Berlanti produced CW show has ever been put on air. I believe they got the cinematographer from Friday Night Lights. I don't know if it was the show or the movie. I'm assuming the show may have been the same cinematographer, but it wasn't the guy that usually shoots the CW shows, and you could tell. And to see them not give Jonathan powers like in the comic books, but to give Jordan Kent the powers, and how this child with depression, who's not as positive and optimistic as the young Clark Kent was, is going to deal with these powers, and how his brother is going to deal with he not being the one to have powers, which he jokes he likes because now he knows his athletic ability was for real. And Clark dealing with the loss of his mom, that's going to be a lot of fallout. That is just going to set up a very, let's be honest, drama filled, but I think solid Superman shows. I don't know if they blew their entire budget on the pilot. Like I said, I have not watched the second episode, but Flight looked outstanding in this show. The suit looked outstanding. They got rid of the stupid neck clips that the Tyler Hoechlin version had on the Supergirl on Supergirl and on the other CW shows like the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover. Tyler Hoechlin has, like, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, kind of a clean cut kind of homeliness to him as Clark Kent that is not the G. Willikers goofy like Christopher Reeve's Brandon Routh take on the character. It's humble. It is definitely not overconfident for sure, but just different positive vibe than the Reeves version of the character. And you really need to watch it, I think, to perceive what I'm talking about. I know I'm not maybe doing the best job of articulating it, but when you see it, you know it's Superman. When you see it, you know it's Clark Kent. It's like, wow, this guy cares more about every single person in the world than some people, unfortunately, care for their own family members. So I'm excited to see where this goes. It was renewed for a season 2 after the pilot was the second highest rated thing, I think, ever to debut on the CW behind the Walker Texas Ranger remake. And then it was extended from a 13 episode season 1 to 15 episodes. And to me, that's perfect. Let's leave it at 15 episodes, 13 episodes, somewhere in that range. We don't need 23 Superman episodes. Okay, I'm gonna the cliffhanger here that this ended on. Apparently, the person who was going toe to toe with Superman in the end of this episode, across space, across Southeast Asia, and what looked like a Kryptonian type suit, very similar to what Zod and Faora were wearing in Man of Steel, reveals that his name's Captain Luthor, and he is a African American man. So is this the version of Lex for Superman and Lois? Is this Lex Luthor from a different Earth? Is this potentially Alexander Luthor from the future, from a different Earth? Who knows? But I'm intrigued. I'm interested. You can't have Superman without Lex Luthor. I didn't expect it this soon, but I'm excited to see where this version of the Man of Steel versus Lex goes. So check out Superman and Lois. The CW app's free. You don't have to pay for it, and they put their shows, albeit with ads, on there the next day. I'm going to confirm the Superman and Lois pilot at a grade 8.5. I think this has the potential to be up there with the Fleischer cartoons and Smallville as the best on-screen Superman stuff, which is saying a lot. Okay, you got the George Reeves Superman series, you got the Superman from Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, the Bruce Timm and Paul Dini style Superman, of course, from Superman the Animated Series. So for me to see this potentially better than those tells you how excited I am for Superman and Lois. That's just about gonna wrap it up for the 110th edition of the Confirmed Epic Podcast. Thank you so much for staying with us on this journey through Spawn, through Superman. It was a ton of fun, and if you click play, you have made my day, so thank you. You can find me on Tumblr. That's where I'm posting a ton of reviews, more so than the Epic Review right now. And again, it's mainly Star Wars books. It's mainly trades, omnis, that kind of thing, collected editions, and that as therealbrad.tumblr.com. And if you don't know, Tumblr's TUMBLR. Of course, you can always find me on Twitter at TheRealBradBell, DREEL Brad Bell. You can find me on the Epic Review, where I'll always be posting this podcast at its official home, thepicreview.com. And don't forget to check out all of Jerry's cool toy collecting action figure goodness over at actionfigurebarbecue.com. That's barbecue spelled out. Thanks for taking flight with us on this edition. And until next time, from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, we are out.
That's all I have to say. about that.